And there's two of them today, which is very exciting. In this talk, founder and editor-in-chief of the Black Explorer magazine, Paradis, will share her perspective on the decolonizing of travel writing by challenging who gets to be called a travel writer and who gets to tell the story of the places we explore and the people who live there. Joining her, the founder and creative director of the ìrìn journal, Mimi Aborowa, which showcases African cities that have big stories to tell, cities that are often overlooked, misinterpreted, and with the hopes of updating people's perspectives regarding that place. Ladies, welcome. It's brilliant to see you. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Oh, there we go. If you unmute yourself, you should be able to say hello.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us.
Hello, everyone. Greetings from Lagos, Nigeria, and I'm really looking forward to this chat.
That's a good point. Ella, where are you calling in from as well? So Mimi, you're in Lagos.
Oh, I'm right in London. I'm in London at the moment. So yeah.
Fantastic.
So yeah, should we get started?
Get started. Yes, absolutely. Sorry, I thought it was. So if you'd like to share your screen or just get going, whatever works with you.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not. You'd think after this entire year I would be more used to the Zoom thingies, but I'm actually. Okay, I'm going to try to share my screen now. I've pulled together a quick presentation. It's more of a thing of having a screen for everybody to look at, while I'm speaking. How do I share my screen? We've just practiced this and I'm still a bit lost.
It's right beneath. If you run your mouse to the bottom of the screen, it will appear. There we go. We've got it.
Yeah. Can you see?
I can see it. Yeah. That looks perfect.
Oh. No, I don't think this is what I'm trying to do. This is different from what we've practiced. Please bear with me.
It does, doesn't it? No worries. I'll tell you what. Let me have a look at.
I think this is it. This is fine.
Yeah. Okay.
I can do this. Okay. All right. Okay, I'm a bit nervous, but all right. So hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. And thank you so much for, for being here. So my name is Ella. So I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of the Black Explorer, which is a new media company that I founded to amplify Black voices in travel. I like a fun fact. I thought I would give you a fun fact about me. I've been traveling solo since I was 10. And I always have to give a bit of an explanation about that. So I've been traveling on my own. So when I was a child, I've never traveled with an adult in my life up until I became an adult myself. My parents would have this tendency of just putting me on a plane and then shipping me off to some of my relatives, wherever they would be in the world. By the time I was 13, they would even take me to the airport anymore. They would just, there would be a flight ticket on the dining table with my passport, and it'd be like, see you after the holidays, see you at the end, wherever, just figure it out. So I've been traveling since I was a very small child. So travel is very much in my bones. I love paper, which kind of translates into my love of magazines and why I decided that publishing would be the way that I would go about amplifying Black voices in travel. And I like to say that I'm a champion of underdogs because before this, I used to run an arts venue here in London, which was all about giving a space in this very expensive city for artists, up-and-coming artists that couldn't afford spaces at the normal prices in London, giving them a space to create art, to make music, to make, whatever they needed to make. So I like moving in spaces where I don't feel like people are quite given the opportunity to be their full self, their full potential. So yeah, that's me. Today, I wanted to thank everybody from the Nomadic Network for giving me this space. And the main two things that I wanted to talk about, sorry, if you see me look down, it's because I have my notes down here that I'm trying to kind of refer to. So the two things that I wanted to cover today is who gets to be called a travel writer, but also who gets to tell the story of the places that we explore and the people who live there. And I'm so excited to be joined by Mimi, who is also an independent publisher based in Lagos, Nigeria. We're both in kind of the same space of trying to give a voice to our communities within this travel space. So I'm very excited to kind of get into that conversation in a moment. So I'm just gonna, before we go into that, I just want to do a quick overview of how I feel the travel space is kind of, travel writing looks at the moment. So one of the questions, how do I go to the next? Okay, so one of the questions that I'm posing is, who is a travel writer? And when you just Google travel writer on Google, when you just Google travel writer on Google, this is what you get. Even in this in 2021, these are the faces that you see. These are the faces that are that you see, and as you can see, it's mainly older white male that are considered travel writers. And I just wanted to kind of run back through a short, like a real quick history of travel writing. So basically. Okay, so
Ella, just to jump in for a moment, we're struggling to see the presentation. If you just press got it on your presenter window, I don't know what you can see there, but we're still on the same slide.
That's weird. I see something completely different. Okay, let me try this again.
There we go. Yeah, it's moved now. It's changed. It was, I think maybe it had just frozen or something. Sorry, ladies and gents listening at home.
Let's try like this.
Yes, that's what we need to do. Press that.
Can you see that?
I see that. Yeah, now try and change the slide to the next one.
Okay, let me go back.
There we go. Yes, now we can see it. Apologies. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Sorry about that. So this is my first slide presenting myself. And so this is the slide that I was talking about when you Google who is a travel writer. When you Google travel writers, these are the faces that you are met with. And this is something that I definitely want to challenge, and we'll kind of talk about that more in a second. But then before, I just wanted to give you like a quick thing of it's not a history, it's literally one slide, so it's not really the history of travel writing, but basically travel writing, it's something that is as ancient as humanity itself. So for as long as we have been on this planet, we have been writing about places and things that we've just, we've discovered, we've seen, and stuff like that. And one of the first people that is considered a travel writer is this guy here on the left called Pausanias. I hope I said that correctly. And he was a Greek traveler and geographer, and he explored all of Greece, writing down detailed notes as he went, and the result of which ended up being a very detailed description of Greece that a lot of historians still base themselves on to know what life was like in ancient times. And then in the 1300s, around the time that Marco Polo was doing his voyages to China and Asia as a whole, travel writing in China kind of started developing as well. And it was very much like travel records of literature, and it was a blend of narrative, of prose, essay, diaries, of people just writing down the things that they encountered as they were kind of moving across the world. So travel writing has been going on for as long as we as human beings have moved around the planet. Now, travel writing as we know it today is very colonial, has a very, yes, colonial aftertaste background to it, because travel writers as we know it today is very much this thing of the colonizers, the imperial, the armies, the yes, explorers. I like to put explorers a bit in a explorer going into uncivilized, undiscovered lands and kind of writing back the things that they've discovered. Missionaries going, trying to like spread the news of the gospel and try to turn savages into Christians or religious people and stuff like that. So travel writing as we know it, even in the language that we use and the way that we describe travel, that we describe our experiences, has very much this connotation of, I have gone to a place that no one knows about, and I have discovered something, and I get to claim that, and I get to write back about it as the person who has claimed this unknown land. And the thing is, you even sense that, you even feel that within our current way of talking about, and the thing is, we're all guilty of that in our own way of talking about the places that we visit these days. Because how many blogs have you read that says, oh, I've discovered this never seen place in this city. Read my blog to see this thing that you have never heard about before. And all this, all this way of talking is very much a way of talking that is very much built in this thing of, I have come and discovered you, and I claim you, and I get to go back and be the one that claims the space that I have discovered and I have come across. So there's that aspect of it. And there's something that we're all, even I, sometimes when I'm writing about the places that I've been, I have to check myself. I have to like remember that there were already people there before I came. There's people who know about this place way better than I do. There's people who, who for them, this is the novel, this is where they live, this is their home. They have a connection to this space that I could only imagine, because I am not from there. So when I'm trying to tell the story of a place, am I telling it from the perspective of, I am a guest here and I am experiencing what has always been there, what has been there way before me, and this is what I'm experiencing and this is what I'm retelling? Or am I coming from the perspective of, oh, I am here, I am coming to discover things, and my idea and my way of seeing things is the only way, and whatever I write back is the only truth, because everything is coming from my, from my own perspective. So yeah, that's kind of an interesting thought experiment that I get to do every day, both in my personal writing, but also in the stories that I commissioned and how I commission stories for my publication. So this is who was a travel writer and now who is a travel writer these days. So this is a snapshot of some of our writers and creators at the with the Black Explorer. So the Black Explorer, as you can tell, it's all about Black explorers, about Black people. It's about our stories. It's about the way that we move through the world as well. And as you can see, the vast majority of our writers are therefore Black, and mostly women. This is something that, I'm personally still working on, is kind of evening the balance of women versus men at the moment. But, I'm only 2 issues in, so again, that's something I'll have to work on. But yeah, so the Black Explorer then presents a different face of writing, of travel writing, of who gets to be a travel writer, who can be, when you Google travel writer, these faces should appear as well. And this is where, with this magazine, with this media company, we're going out of our way to really center the stories of Black people who travel, of Black people who explore, of Black people who, just go out into the world and also have stories to tell that mainstream media doesn't always provide a space for. So yes, these are a few of our writers that I'm really proud to share. And oh, what am I doing? Sorry. I'm just gonna go back to my notes 1 second. Sorry if I go in and out. I'm not used to presenting like this. And yeah, so for the second part of the talk is then, you know, who gets to tell the story of the places and the people that we encounter on our journey. And this is where I very much want to bring in Mimi from ìrìn Journal. So Mimi has started ìrìn Journal a couple of years ago, and she very much focuses on telling the stories of African cities in a way that, you know, there's only one other magazine that I know of that is also owned by a Black woman, and only started in the past year, that also goes into this kind of details of giving a voice to especially African narratives in a way that isn't seen at the moment. So before we continue, I just want to give the floor to Mimi for a second so that she can introduce herself. I'm going to cut my presentation. Let's stop this. Here we go. So yeah, so I'm gonna give the floor to Mimi for a second so that she can introduce herself, and then we'll have a little discussion, and then we'll take some of your questions as well. I hope this is okay. I'm very nervous right now, so sorry.
You're doing amazing, Ella. You're doing amazing. So hi everyone, and like Ella rightly said, the premise of ìrìn is to really hone in on who is telling the story. I heard this quote by the late BBC World News presenter, Komla Dumor, and he said that until the lion learns to write, the story will always glorify the hunter. And that was very, very poignant for me, that you're going to write from your own perspective, in your own favor, through your own bias, whether it's intentional or not. And I, like Ella, I love paper, I love print, I love travel. I was fortunate to come from a family where we're all traveling. And my mom's like, okay, we're going to Moscow. Do you want to come? Like, yes, of course. Wherever you want to go, I'm ready to follow with you. I was like her little handbag going on every journey. And then I was in England, and I fell in love with travel publications, the Serial Mag, the Boat Mag, even we have a Condé Nast Travelers, all the publications that we all know. And when I like something, I throw all of myself into it. I was contacting the editors, contacting the writers. I was like, for your next city, you should totally write about Lagos. You know, I'm all like, you're always writing about Marrakesh and Cape Town. We need more African cities. It was my personal mission to advocate for African representation when it came to travel publications. And then they responded and like, yeah, we'd love to, you know, and it was that general, like, I'd love to, but it'd be nice to, but. And I had a moment where I was like, why am I waiting for these people to tell my own story? Who is better to tell my story than me? Who is better to tell a story of Lagos City than someone who's lived in Lagos most of their lives? And it's made me think that, oh, I'm not a travel writer. This is a writer, you know, I have to have all of these bylines and be written. I'm not good enough. But then I had to really assess why I was thinking that way. When you, like what Ella said, when you see a travel writer, who do you see? And I didn't see myself. When I read stories about Lagos, I didn't see my city. We're all familiar with, you know, the images of charity aid, corruption. I'm not saying that that isn't part of the perspective, but why is that the only narrative that determines how a continent is portrayed? There is so much beauty, there's so much diversity, there's so much strength, there's so much people doing amazing things in their own little corners, and they're looking for a platform for the world to see. And from that idea, I started the journey. The journey was by no way easy. It was very difficult. It was a side thing, a passion project. I was working in geology, and on the half I was creating a publication, working with writers, artists. But you know, when you have passion and you have vision and something else just pushes you, and I felt like there was a deeper purpose for this to exist. And a journey that started through an idea in 2016 became a publication in 2019. So this is what it looks like for our Lagos issue. fake stories, photographs, everything. And it's just like, I want people to read about it and be like, oh, this Lagos is interesting. I would like to visit. And I'm not limiting the writers to only people from Lagos. Anyone can have a connection to a city. Anyone, you could have traveled to Lagos and have a very interesting story to tell. Please, the more the merrier, but it's to really decolonize, like Ella said, who is the one holding the pen? Who is the one telling your own story? And that's basically, in a nutshell, how the journey began and is, still going.
Thank you, Mimi. Honestly, I am so inspired, because I have to say, and actually I have never told her this before, but ìrìn was very much an inspiration for me in getting the Black Explorer made as well, because I came across the original Kickstarter campaign after it was done, and I was like, oh, maybe I can do this as well. So yeah, we've been she's been an inspiration for me for all these years. So it's good to kind of be sharing the space with you today as well. So to get back to our question of who gets to be called a travel writer, so I think we both have this perspective of, you don't have to fit a mold to be able to tell your stories. I know personally, the way that I commission stories is that I have a theme for each issue, and I will go, for example, on Instagram, and I will find people who seem to have an interesting story to tell, and I will ask them, do you want to tell this story in a publication? And often they will tell me, oh, but I'm not a writer, I'm not a travel writer, I'm not a, I've never done this. And my thing is always, the story is more important than whether you are a writer or not. Writing is something that you can learn, writing is something that you can practice, but the story that you have is so important, and we need to share that story more than anything else. And if it means that I have to spend a few hours with you, and probably sometimes days, editing with you and honing the story with you so that we can actually get it out, that is more important to me than whether you can class yourself as a travel writer or not. And you will see then in the magazine, especially in the Black Explorer, that the majority of the contributors are not travel writers in the sense that we are used to. They are not people, they don't even have a blog most of the time. These are just people who are just pure explorers and adventurers at heart, that have these beautiful stories that are not given a platform that they deserve. So Mimi, I wanted to know, can you also share with us, like, what is your process for finding the stories for ìrìn? How do you go about finding the people? How do you go about picking the stories that you do feature and so on? Like, what is your process in kind of redefining who gets to be a travel writer?
Okay, so I completely agree with you. Like, and for our Lagos issue, I had to reach out to people. I was like, this place, you should write about it. It would be great. And then a lot of people needed persuading, because it was something that they weren't, it's not that popular here in Lagos. You haven't really seen, travel magazines. It's like, okay, writing, they didn't really understand it. So there was a reorientation process in terms of getting people to write. But how I start is, ìrìn has a very cultural element. So we're telling stories about the food, the history, the art, the music. So I think across all the different themes. And then I do my own research in terms of, okay, for instance, in Lagos, yellow is very popular for all our taxis. It would be nice to have something that illustrates that. So I start thinking of all the core themes. And the beauty about it is that we work with predominantly creatives. So artists, so they actually give a really fresh spin and take on it, and then we all just reach out into our community, like, okay, this person's doing this really interesting project, this would be good to feature, this is something about the history of the city that, even apart from getting outsiders to learn about the city, within Africa as itself, we don't really know much about each other. There's this disconnect. So it's also getting someone to learn about the historical context of a city. So let's talk about this festival, what it means. Let's talk about the people and what they're doing now. So it's honestly working with a group of people that have strong connections to that city, and we have like a serious brainstorm session. And then from there, we're reaching out to a community who can write this. And it kind of grew to a space where people then now started pitching for us that, oh, this is something I saw, I like to write about this and stuff like that. But honestly, our creative brainstorm process is very integral to how, ìrìn approaches content and its contributors.
And do you, So do you pick specific, so do you have a specific thing about how you pick the people, now that people are pitching to you, what do you have in mind when you receive pitches from people? What are you looking out for?
Honestly, it's a story that whether informs me, educates me, or inspires me. So that's something that's at the back of my head. Those are the three core things for what I'm looking for. So if someone's pitching something, I need to, how is the story making me feel? So there's this thoughtfulness to the content that we put out. We're not just trying to put mindless, these are the 5 best restaurants to try on Lagos Island. You know, you can find that anywhere, but it's different if it's coming from a personal perspective, that these are the, you know, restaurants on when I'm walking this path. You know, it just gives a little something extra, you know? So that is honestly how it inspires how I go about the stories and everything.
I think that's absolutely right. I completely relate with that. Something that I like to tell people as well about the Black Explorer is basically 2 things. So the Black Explorer is not as much a magazine about travel as it is a magazine about people who travel. So the people are always the core. It's always like travel is the stage in front on the stage or the thread that connects us all. But at the core, the stories that you will see in the magazine are stories of human beings literally going about, you know, wandering the world and finding connection, finding adventure, finding, you know, inspiration, and kind of retelling that story. And another thing that I think is very specific that I also relate with you is the fact that you will never open an issue of the Black Explorer and find your top 10 places to eat in Paris or your top 5 things to do. That will never be, you know, what the Black Explorer is about. It's always about what have you experience, what has changed you as a human, what has affected you, what has inspired you. I think one of my favorite stories from this last issue, so this is our last issue, by the way, the volume 2, which was titled Staying Put. One of my favorite stories in that is the story of Kemi, who she is of Nigerian descent. Her dad was born and raised in Nigeria, but then they moved to the UK, and then her dad passed away in 2016, I think. And before he died, she promised him that she would visit Salvador in Brazil to try and reconnect with their long lost relatives that had been displaced because of the transatlantic slave trade. Now, when I tell it to you like this, the story at its core has a very sad and a very painful core to it. But when you read the story, it's one of the most joyful, one of the most beautiful stories that I've ever, you know, travel stories that I've ever had the pleasure to read. And I am so, you know, honored that I got to be the one to publish that story, because ultimately what the story was about, it was about the fact that she was about to find, she found a piece of her halfway across the world where she didn't think it would be. The food that she tasted, she even had her family name even lived on with people that her family had never even met or had been like disconnected with for so long. Recipes that she was taught like were almost the same as the one that she grew up eating. The dances, the music, and so on. There were so many similarities. And she was like, I was in a different part of the world, but I felt as much as home as I felt going back to Nigeria as a child. So the story that unfolded was the story of just someone grieving the loss of her dad and traveling across the world to kind of reconnect with him. And she was like, this is the best way I could have felt his, you know, his spirit with me, because she could feel him with her as she was exploring Salvador. And one of the many of the feedback that I get from our readers that read that story is like, could I have relatives halfway across the world? Could I have, well, you know, can I reconnect with my family? So it kind of pushes people to explore in a different way. So many people that have come to me and they're like, oh, now I need to go to Brazil. Now I need to go and see whether my family name lives on. And this fosters this way of travel that is so much more what's the word I'm looking for? So much more present, so much more connected, and so much less destructive, because we cannot deny the fact that travel is one of the big polluters, but how you travel, I feel, can make a big difference, in how you move. And I think that kind of also brings us to the fact of who gets to tell the story of a certain place, who gets to tell the story of a certain destination, and so on and so forth. So Mimi, for you, so you go into, I know you're working on Addis right now for your next issue, is that correct?
Yeah, so we've been working on Addis. I actually went there in May, but there's actually a lot going on in Ethiopia at the moment. So we've actually paused because community is very important to us, and I don't want to put out content that our community based in that city will not really align with. So we've paused just to check that, our writers or photographers in Ethiopia are okay, if they think it's the right time. So that's very important to me. So yes, but went to Addis, and it was really important, just showing their rich culture. Ethiopia is one of the African nations that was never colonized. So with that, they have a strong sense of identity. They have very rich food, and it's something I'm very looking forward to, to putting out. So yeah.
Yeah. So basically what I wanted to touch on with that is that who gets to tell the story of a place. And the thing that I like, me personally, I like when somebody comes to me with the story of a place that they are not, that is not home for them. I try to be very wary of, are you the right person to tell this story? Are you the right person to kind of recount this history and stuff like that? Can you bring in people from the destination, from the place? So you have this thing where you move yourself basically into the destination to work on that piece. So I guess that's also kind of give us a bit of a look into that process.
So I think what made the Lagos issue very successful was because I'm from Lagos. But then how do you tackle another city when you don't have that straight connection? So it's very important to me to work with someone from a city that has that same strong understanding of a place, so they also guide my eyes. So we find a city, find the person, and then I also think it's important for me to visit. I would, to go and experience it for myself as well. So if opportunity comes, someone like me, I could write, a Nigerian who's never been to East Africa and what it was like, the similarities and the differences. I think even that is an important story to showcase. So we have a theme guide that we put out. So a theme guide could just, like I said, cover like food, art, and write the important things. Like for instance, with Ethiopia, they have a strong electronic jazz scene rather. So Ethio jazz. So write things like that. Ethio jazz. Ethiopia has a very big car racing community. Car racing. They have this thing called tej, which is honey wine, that a lot of people don't know. So write all of these important facets of the culture, because the journal thematically is split in between the past and the present. Because history and culture is very important to me. So I want you to learn a bit and then see what it was like before and see what it's like now and what it's hoping to be. So then aside from the fundamental themes, then we just look and see what's happening. When I'm there, I meet people, have conversations, because even through a conversation, you might find out about something that you might not necessarily find when you Google. So that also helps. So with that, we have, I guess, a broad, different ideas and different themes. And then we just start taking it there, just streaming it down. And obviously there's so much you can tell about a place. There's so much. With only a limited number of pages, it's not everything that you can, showcase. So another thing that we're working on is to expand the digital aspect of it. So the city isn't limited to print alone. Like for instance, Lagos is sold out, but it doesn't mean that you can't read anything about Lagos anymore. So that is kind of the process of how I work. I've only done the Lagos issue, but it worked well for me. And I'm just very passionate and optimistic as to how we approach it and what we're going to create going forward.
That is so exciting. I feel like I'm mindful of time because I feel like I could talk about this for hours and hours. I think the other thing that I kind of want to share as well, which I want to impart on everybody kind of who's with us and who will be watching this, is that who gets to be a travel writer and who gets to tell travel story is also decided by who reads the stories. So I know that with us, we have found our audience, and our audience is mostly people like us who, you know, haven't seen themselves represented and who are yearning really for these stories, for their voices to be heard and to be seen. But the thing is, and like I said about the magazine, it's not necessarily about travel, it's about people who travel, it's about human connection. And I think that whether the traveler is Black, white, or whatever, we can all connect with the story. It's just that now we're trying to kind of even that playing field to kind of have more of that representation of these voices that haven't had the space to be heard before. And the thing is, we can only do that if, as people who read the stories, as people who interact with these stories, you are also, and I guess if you're here, obviously that's exactly what you're about. If you're here, is that you also yearn, even though you might not be like us, you also yearn to see diverse voices and to hear diverse stories and to hear other perspectives. So that also plays a part in who gets to be a travel writer, because to me, basically, a travel writer is somebody who writes about their travel so that somebody else can read it. So that's basically it. That's all it is. It's not, you know, you have to be this rugged person. That no, if you just went out of your house and you went into the woods behind you know, just a few kilometers away, and you discovered this place, you've been living there for ages, and you've discovered this place that you never knew existed, and all of a sudden you have this deep love and emotion and all this realization that come to you, and you feel the need to put it down, to write it down, to describe how these sceneries have triggered these emotions inside of you. These are beautiful stories that are worth telling, that are worth sharing, and there's always somebody out there that will want to read them. And I think both Mimi and I would very much like hope that more than just our own demographics that yearn for that representation, that you as well, who are not part of our demographic, that you also kind of feel that push to hear a different perspective on things, on travel, on exploration, on discovery and stuff like that. And all the stories that I think we share are very much kind of in that line. But yeah, sorry, I think I've rambled on enough. I think there's questions.
Not at all, not at all. That has been absolutely fantastic. Absolutely, just absorbed by what you're both saying. So thank you for being so open and so honest and so genuine and authentic and truthful with us. Just a reminder, if you've got anything you'd love to say or any points you'd love to raise, pop them in the chat now, and I'll continue to go through them. I just want to say to Ella and Mimi, they won't have seen this because they'll have been talking, but there's so many comments in here about, you know, such beautiful messages. Thank you, love that. Yeah, like people just talking about they've got chills, you're doing amazing, you know, people are talking about how moved they are by what you've been saying, so that's incredible. Yeah, loads of questions for you, to be fair. One that I'm going to ask to start with, because I write about places that I visit, and they're places I've visited for days or weeks, not as much as, you know, not as much, Mimi, as perhaps you do because you've lived there, but have just visited. And my question is, how familiar do you think you should be? What qualifies you as a writer of that place? Do you know what I mean? Because sometimes I feel a little bit like I haven't got the right to say that because I've been there for not a very long time. Or I don't say I haven't got the right, I question my authenticity writing about that place because I was only there for a weekend or something like that. Is that, you know, what do you think? Is that something that you consider a timeline or whatever?
It's not as much a timeline as it is what is the perspective from which you are writing. So more often than not, you will see people that will go somewhere, that will visit a place for like 2 or 3 days, and then they will write about it as if they're the utmost expert on the place, as if they've seen everything that could be seen, and they're giving you like something that really bothers me is like, I can give you the definitive guide of it. And you're not no, that, but if you write from the perspective of, I'm a guest in this place where
Yes.
other people have been living for so long. I have arrived here and this is how much time I've spent here. And from my perspective, from where I stand, from the little that I have encountered, this is what I can tell you. This is what it looks like to me. This is what this interaction has felt for me. It's like, of course you will always center yourself because it's ultimately you are the one who is going through the space and writing about it, but it's very important to make it clear that your knowledge of the space is limited to the time and the space that you've been moving in. You cannot come in there and be like, I have the definitive guide to Paris because I went there 3 times in a year, so I know everything. No, you don't. Absolutely don't. And it's important to have that perspective as well, because that also adds like a richness to it. And if you want to go to the next level, you can be like, so this is my perspective from where I stand, but I've met this person. And this is something that I feel we don't do enough in travel writing, is give a voice to people who are already there. You can use your space, you can use your platform to give a voice to people who are already there, for them to tell their story in the way that is fit for them. So see it in 2 ways. I have been here in this space and put into perspective your position, but also use your platform to also give a voice to somebody who has been there for a long time. And that can definitely add a lot more richness to your story as well. And it kind of connects you even more to the space. I hope that helps.
No, that was a fantastic answer. Very insightful. Yeah. Someone has asked, and this is from someone else listening, what's your big goal for each of your publications? What sort of difference are you looking to make, or where are you looking for them to go in the future?
Mimi, do you want to start with that? I'll shut up for a second.
No worries. For us, I think like what really drives ìrìn is that we want to connect the continent within and beyond its borders through people that call it home. And you don't have to be a resident to call a place home. But I just feel like there's just this disconnect where Africa is typically presented as, a continent that you don't really know much about, or what you know is really limited. And through sharing stories from people from a place, you can probably read and see, you read a story about something like, oh, that sounds just like my nan, or that sounds like something my friend will do. And it's like, because that's humanity. Humanity connects all of us wherever we are in the world. And it's to put, like what Ella said, to put the people back at the forefront of the place. And obviously I love print. The journal is, our starting point, but it's not by all what we're limited to. It's expanding it. You can connect through reading. You can connect through physically experiencing the place. You can connect through, an item. So it's just taking that idea of exploring connections and showing that you can see yourself in literally someone from 1,000 miles away from you. So that is really something that just drives me. And to ensure that we are empowering African creators, we are giving them a platform to tell their own stories. We're giving them a platform to, to express themselves. Because for instance, if these popular publications, if they're looking to commission a writer, I know it's probably difficult to find writers from a city you want to write about. So you'll send someone that and they'll fly down there, you pay them, they'll write about it. That's not a problem. But then there are loads of different talented people from a place who would also benefit from such an opportunity. So it's also just, which is why I said it's really looking within, that I don't have to, Vogue doesn't have to be the pinnacle of my worth, or Condé Nast doesn't have to be the pinnacle of my worth. It can literally be from anywhere. So just creating that platform where you can feel empowered to tell your own story. So that is what drives ìrìn, because it's not easy. It's definitely, like, I'm pretty sure Ella could share how difficult raising money on Kickstarter. I had to, it got to a point where I was hustling like family and friends, like, oh, hey, put money in my Kickstarter, it became a full-time job. And then aside from that, we don't just want people purchasing the journal to be, I was fortunate to have stockists in Tokyo and Sao Paulo, Brazil, but I also want someone in Lagos to be able to buy the journal. I want someone in Lomé to buy the journal. But then finding stockists, it's not easy, but when you have that bigger goal that's driving you, that's just what gives you the push to keep on doing it and keep on doing it. So yeah, that's me.
Love that. No, a great answer. Ella, have you got anything you'd like to add on to that, or do you feel like that has?
I think it pretty much covers it. I mean, I guess the main difference, I guess, will be between Mimi and I is that where Mimi is doing it very much and focusing the African continent, which I think is amazing. And I like watch this space. I'm sure we're going to collaborate on some stuff in the future, which is going to be amazing. What the Black Explorer is trying to do is to provide this platform for the Black travelers narrative to exist on a global scale. Because if you look at especially if you look at the Black travel movement right now, it's very much Black American centered, whereas I'm an African woman. I was born I was born and raised in two Western African countries. Then I moved to Europe. I've lived all across Europe. So the way I travel through the world and what I'm looking for is different from what a Black American would look for. So there's the Black European perspective, the Black African perspective, the Black American perspective. There's the Black, South American. There's the African and Black diasporas are all over the world, like any other diaspora. And with the Black Explorer, what we're trying to do is connect their travel narrative in one space and kind of give it that platform to exist on a global scale and really kind of give people a voice that haven't had a voice in this because there's so many ways to travel as well. Like right now we're kind of thinking of that holiday and type of way of traveling, but most of our parents, us who are second generation in Europe, for example, they have traveled for completely other reasons that we are now reaping the benefits from. But that was a form of travel that really defined them, that really defined the way they move through the world and also had an effect on us. So there's so much diversity within Black travel storytelling, within Black storytelling that isn't, a nuance that isn't allowed to exist in mainstream media. I find mainstream media likes to really kind of hone in on our struggles, on our pains, on, so I went to this place and I was treated, people were racist here and there. And I'm not saying that doesn't exist, it does. But mainstream media likes to focus too much on the pain of Blackness, whereas we want to center, and I think Mimi can speak for that as well, we want to center on the joy of Blackness, the joy of exploring as a Black person, the joy of, moving through the world as a Black person. So yeah, that's what I will add to that.
I love that. And something you touched on there that I found particularly moving is the idea that myself as a white British person has always seen travel as a privilege, as a holiday, as a trip abroad, as like something that you do as a treat at the end of a year of work or whatever. And I think probably the majority of people I've connected with through the travel sort of sphere are in that same mindset. But the idea that you've talked about that as travel to better yourself, travel to move for another reason is a real sort of mindset shift, and connecting with that must be a very, very powerful thing. How do you find then, I think you did touch on this, Ella, how do you find writers for your publications? And as a flip side to that, if anyone who watches this in the future or is on the call now thinks, yes, I've got a great idea, or I'd really like to connect. Is that a way to do it? Do you just sort of pick people up, around, or do you target people very sort of specifically?
I'm the only thing I'm specific in right now is that I'm creating a space for Black people. So the people that come to write, that's the only thing I'm specific about right now. And I know that for some people it's going to feel like, oh, but why, but this and that. But the thing is, that's the whole point. The whole point is that we only have so many publications where we're allowed to be seen. Whereas as a mainly white person, you have so many choices of publications that you can go to. So that's the only thing that I'm specific about. Now, as to who it is specifically, It's a mix. It's very much a mix. I literally trail Instagram, the comments. I'm lurking in Instagram comments all the time. And something that I particularly like to do is that I will go on the Instagram page of a bigger Instagram person, travel person, something that they will have posted about, and people will be having a discussion about it. And often in those comments, people will start telling like short version of something that's happened to them, or a story that's happened to them. And then I will pick on the one that I find interesting, and I will message them and be like, that sounds like an interesting story. Do you want to elaborate on that? Do you want a space to kind of elaborate on that and tell the full story, the whole entire story? So that's one way that I do it. Another way is that now I do get a lot of, submissions as well, of people coming in and sending in stories. And I think people always, and I guess I'm quite proud of that I managed to make it so that people who are not usually travel writers, or wouldn't call themselves travel writers, feel confident coming to me with their story and saying, this is something that's happened to me. This is something that I've done, and I'm not sure how to tell this story, but I would like to tell this story. Can I tell this story with you? And if it's something that I think is interesting, I'll be like, yes, let's sit down and let's create the story that in a way that can be published, that can be printed. So it's a two-way thing. It's my favorite part of the whole thing of having this publication, is like the actual crafting of the story. But sadly, I only get it to do it for like 15-20% of the time. That's like one of the trials. Like, something that people don't realize is that starting something like this, 80% of the time you're not actually doing this. I mean, at least 80% of the time I'm not actually doing this. I am fighting too big, mastodont industry to try and be recognized, and to try and create this, claw out this space. And it's so much work, it's so much energy, it's so exhausting. It's like, it's having to like defend my humanity and the humanity of the people that I create a space for. And you would think that after everything that happened last year, that it would be much easier, but it's not. And it's infuriating, and it's a lot of crying. It's a lot of, I can't do this, I'm done, I'm not doing this anymore. And then just like the next day, I'm like, oh, all right, let's go.
I can imagine you both feel that, in the sense that you're not only telling your stories, but you're sort of taking on the stories of other people, aren't you? And sort of meshed within those stories of feelings of, their themselves, and their discovery of their history or their future or whatever it might be. And yeah, you're sort of protecting that and pushing that out to the world for them. That's a real brave thing to do, I think.
Yeah, exhausting. I don't know, Vivi, if you're as tired as I am, but I am. Yes, I am.
No, I completely agree with the sentiment. And it's just like what you said, we're taking on a huge challenge. For someone like myself, I wouldn't define myself as a travel writer or travel journalist. I'm curious, I ask questions, and I see things in different ways. And I've decided to create a publication that is representation for an entire continent. And imposter syndrome kind of kicks in. I was like, really, girl? Like, you think you can do this? But I think what's so beautiful, especially with what, Ella has done in inviting me into this space, is that I find, in terms of things that are positioning, like, Black travelers or the African continent, most people want to gatekeep it. You want to be the one that has done this. But, there's a lot of space for all of us to shine, and we all have our unique perspectives. We all have our own unique ideas, our own unique ways of execution. And it's just that we have to do this. We have to support ourselves, because the mission is bigger than us. We have to create spaces. We have to be allies. We have to advocate. We have to put opportunities, because it is very important. It is very necessary. It is needed. I applaud Ella for what she's doing. I applaud, the Nomadic network for creating a space as well for, you know, us to tell our own stories. And I do hope that this has also inspired you as a listener, and you maybe now want to read about these perspectives that you might not have thought of before, because there's value, and it's just to open your mind beyond what you're used to. And there's so much around us. The world is a magical place. And I just hope that, you know, it does inspire you to engage with the content that we are creating.
Mm. One more thing to sort of ask you both before we wrap up today. What you're really talking about here, it strikes me, is not just sort of packaging people's stories in a beautiful way and putting them out there in the world, but you're inspiring people, be them readers, be them people on these calls, be them people that you network with, to say, you have a story, you need to tell this, you have a story, you know, you should write this, you should reach out, you should do this. If someone watching this is in that mindset and thinks, yes, I need to tell this story from whatever perspective they happen to come from, how would you begin? What would be the first thing to do?
Do you mean for them, or
no, for them? So say they're watching this and that you know, you're dropping these, the words you're saying have gone sort of straight into their psyche, and they're thinking, right, I've got this story. It's been smoldering inside me for however many years. I need to start writing this or expressing it in another art form, be it photography or you know, whatever art form they might want to express themselves in. What do they do next? What do you think is sort of the first step to getting that out there, you know, to getting that recognized?
I think for me personally, I would say find the thing that makes sense for you. So it might not necessarily be writing about it. It might not necessarily be, you know, I don't know, making movies, but find the thing that makes sense for you. If writing makes sense, then you can do that. If making a movie makes sense, you can do that. But I think it's very much this thing of, I'm a very impulsive person in the way that I do things. So when an idea comes to me, I have to just do it right then and there. And I would literally drop everything that I'm doing to just do it right then and there. So if I get the idea that I need to write something, I might be in the middle of a discussion, and sometimes that will seem very, I also have, it's maybe a bit TMI, but I also have ADHD. So the way that I, you know, move across the world is also slightly different. So it's a very impulsive way of doing things. So I would say to people, be impulsive with the urges that you get with this. Like, don't overthink it too much, because as soon as you start thinking too much about it, your brain will find a reason to tell you that it's not a good idea. So I have learned to kind of lean more into my impulsivity, because before I was very much in this, oh, this is an impulse, I should rein it in. Whereas now, whenever I get an impulsive thought, I literally just go into it. So long as I have two things that I try to live by is do the least amount of harm possible. And once I have done harm, because I'm a human being and all of those, and once I have done any kind of harm, is find a way to either apologize for it or to make it better. So other than that, I will follow my impulses. And just as soon as it comes in, just like go for it. Just do whatever. Yes. If you have this thought that, oh, I have a story and I think I should write it down, literally just grab a pen and start writing. It doesn't matter whether it makes sense or it doesn't make sense or it's not coherent. Just write it down. You can forget about it. I have so many notebooks of stuff that I've written and forgotten about. And I'm now at this like end of the year period where I'm like going through my notebooks again. And I'm like, oh, I wrote that story down. Maybe I can go back and actually shell it out and properly write it out. Or maybe it's just going to be a story just for me. So I don't know if that helps. I hope that helps.
That does completely. And I think you've struck on something that we all suffer with, that sort of self-censorship, that imposter syndrome. Mimi used the word a few minutes ago, you know, and that exists in everyone. That, who am I to tell this story? Who am I to paint this picture or create this thing? You know, and what you're saying there speaks volumes. Just do it. Just get the things you need and create. Mimi, is there anything you would like to add to that, or do you think Ella has has
Ella's
expressed it.
pretty much, yeah, she's pretty much said, she's pretty much hit the nail on the head. But for me, because I'm visual, so I like to, if someone comes and they really want to tell a story, and then it's like, okay, I don't know, I really want to, my ideas are just running, okay, how can we present them in this way that'll be interesting? Like, we had someone, he wanted to interview an artist that he stumbled upon his work and he loved his work, and he actually was writing it down on paper. So he wrote down the questions on paper, and the artist responded and drew illustrations, and we scanned that, and that's actually in the journal. So it's like, let's explore different expressions of presenting your work out there, because what is coming from a place of authenticity, I think that just it translates. Whether you feel like I'm not the best person to tell the story, but this is something that's really important to me, this is something that I really like to, you know, tackle, I really like to try. So I just, sometimes I do have to rein it in, but I'm like thinking, okay, good, let's see if we can like illustrate a map, or let's see if we can add some digital, like my mind just goes to different ways to get it out there in a way that the perspective would be engaging to different readers. So I agree with Ella, like, don't cancel yourself out, don't self-eliminate, just, you know, sit down. And which is also what Ella said, that she crafts stories with people as well, because like we supporting you to get your story and your voice out there. So yeah.
Wow, yeah. Fantastic. So many great things said today. Erica has just posted in the chat your websites and your Instagram pages. I would wholeheartedly recommend that everyone watching this goes over to your Instagram pages, gives you a follow, and goes onto your websites and checks that out. She's even put one for the Black Explorer magazine, which is a discount code, TNN15.
Yes. So yeah, because it's a holiday, and well, our next print issue is not going to be out until March of next year, but you could already, if you wanted to, you know, gift a subscription to a friend or get one for yourself. And I thought, you know, yeah, why not have a little discount on me? So yeah, that's kind of it.
Absolutely. I will be doing that 100%. Thank you both so much for joining us today. This has been incredible. Thank you for watching this at home. The video will be available at some point in the next week.